Katarina O'Neill.
And I'm Jessica Larnan.
And I'm Brianna Thomas.
And today we'll be focusing on the Eighth Amendment,
which is cruel and unusual punishment.
We will be focusing our viewpoint on the death penalty. So what is cruel and unusual punishment? Cruel and unusual punishment is to inflict pain or suffering.
So is the death penalty considered cruel and unusual?
To receive the death penalty, you have to commit a capital offense, which includes murder and larceny.
The southern states are more acceptable to the death penalty, where the northern states are not.
Whether the death penalty is proscribed by the Eighth Amendment, which prohibits cruel and unusual punishments. Death penalty may be a very bad idea, but no American ever voted to adopt a constitutional provision that eliminated it, that eliminated that as an option.
There are 3 types of executions used currently today in the United States.
One of them being the lethal injections.
The second being the electric chair.
And lastly, being used through gas chambers.
Lethal injection is the most common form of execution in the U.S. The process uses the 2 major drugs, sodium thiopental and pentobarbital. The individual who was convicted is first strapped down to a chair by his legs, his chest, and his arms. He is then given 2 doses of the drug. The drug will then run through the veins, which will slowly shut down the nervous system until it reaches the heart. The process takes about 5 to 10 minutes before the individual is pronounced dead.
The electric chair is not commonly used in America anymore, but when it is, they first shave the person, like, everywhere, and then they put a sponge soaked in saline on top of their head. After that, they attach electrodes to their leg and their head, and they run electricity through their body for 30 seconds. The voltage varies between 100 to 2,000 volts. They check and see if the person's pulse is not there, and if it still is, they will repeat the process again until the person finally dies.
People convicted as guilty may also be innocent. Some ways that lead to misconvictions can be inadequate legal representation, police and prosecutorial misconduct, perjured testimony and mistaken eyewitness testimony, racial prejudice, jailhouse snitch testimony, suppressed or misinterpretation of mitigating evidence, or community and political pressures to solve a case.
In January of 2000, Governor George Ryan of Illinois said this: "I cannot support a system which in its administration has proven so fraught with error and has come so close to the ultimate nightmare, the state's taking of innocent life. Until I can be sure that everyone sentenced to death in Illinois is truly guilty, until I can be sure with moral certainty that no innocent man or woman is facing a lethal injection, no one will meet that fate."
Precisely the same. The issue that we ought to be paying attention to is, who are these people who we execute in the U.S.? He's somebody who grew up in circumstances that most of the people in this room cannot remotely imagine. They are people who have not had any human connections until probably they arrived in prison or on death row. They're probably people who were represented at trial by horrible lawyers. If they didn't have horrible lawyers at their trial, then they were represented by lawyers who didn't have adequate resources and didn't have access to adequate resources. They may well be members of an ethnic minority.
In 2002, the court ruled that executing a mentally retarded person was considered as cruel and unusual because of their lack of knowledge of the crime. To be considered as mentally retarded, you would generally have an IQ less than 70.
You know, as far as whether people should be charged, I think the answer is there you really do want to look at the individual case, because there are people with mental retardation who certainly have enough understanding of the act that they've committed that they can go to trial, they're competent to stand trial, and they can be duly convicted. That's not everybody, but it certainly is a large number of the people, even with mental retardation.
In 2005, the court ruled that people under the age of 18 in the time of their cannot be sentenced to death due to their youth and inexperience in life.
To top it all off, each individual death penalty trial costs the U.S. between $1.5 to $2 million. And where does this money come from? That's right, you guessed it, your taxes. So if you were in the jury to a life sentence, would you send them to life without parole, or would you send them to death row?